Good day, everyone. For today's video report, we're going to talk about the approaches to teaching speaking. I hope you will stay tuned and continue on listening to this presentation as we go along with the content. Before we proceed to the main topic of this lesson, let us first define the word speaking. So, what is speaking? Most of the time, people define speaking as the delivery of language through the mouth. But let us not just limit our understanding with that definition. In addition, speaking is described as the method of creating and sharing meaning in a variety of contexts through the use of verbal and nonverbal symbols such as facial expressions, body movement, and posture. Among the four skills, or the speaking, reading, listening, and writing, speaking is often regarded as the most difficult of the four abilities since it aims to develop and improve the communicative ability of a student. Hence, speaking is an important aspect of studying and teaching a second language.
So speaking is a crucial part of second language learning and teaching. Despite its importance, for many years, teaching speaking has been undervalued and English language teachers have continued to teach speaking just as a repetition of drills or memorization of dialogues. However, today's world requires that the goal of teaching speaking should improve students' communicative skills because only in that way students can express themselves and learn how to follow the social and cultural rules appropriate in each communicative circumstance.
How to teach speaking. Now, many linguistics and ESL teachers agree on that students learn to speak in the second language by interacting. Communicative language teaching and collaborative learning serve best for this aim. Communicative language teaching is based on real-life situations that require communication. By using this method in ESL classes, students will have the opportunity of communicating with each other in the target language. In brief, ESL teachers should create a classroom environment where students have real-life communication, authentic activities, and meaningful tasks that promotes oral language. This can occur when students collaborate in groups to achieve a goal or to complete a task. Let's say, for example, activities like interviews. Students can conduct interviews on selected topics with various people. It is a good idea that the teacher provides a rubric to students so that they know what type of questions they can ask or what path to follow. But students should prepare their own interview questions. Conducting interviews with people gives students a chance to practice their speaking ability not only in the class but also outside and helps them socialize. After interviews, each student can present his or her study to the class. Moreover, students can interview each other and introduce his or her partner to the class. Another examples are activities like role play, simulations, information gap, brainstorming, storytelling, story completion, and reporting.
Environment is essential. Generally speaking, there are two factors to affect students speaking English in class. One is they fail to find suitable words to express themselves, and the other is they are afraid of making mistakes. Sometimes they make mistakes when they are speaking because they are shy and nervous. So, good environment helps the student to speak actively and correctly. On the other hand, as I, being a teacher, I will ease my students and remove their nervousness, fear, and anxiety with encouraging words. It is important that the students are comfortable with their environment so that they can express themselves clearly and boost the self-confidence in speaking in front of their classmates.
Methods are important. It is very important for the teachers to adapt as many ways possible to let students to practice speak in class. It is important for teacher to reinforce a method simply because speaking is the crucial part of learning and teaching, and teachers should imply many tasks that would attain a communicative performance.
Let's proceed to principles of teaching speaking. First, focused in both fluency and accuracy, where tasks have linguistic or language-based objective. For example, an oral recitation activity where a teacher will give his or her student 3 minute spoken description of their dream house. In an exercise like this, Students will be given an opportunity to talk about their dream houses without any interruptions and corrections. Instead, a teacher helps the students to perceive and use the building blocks of language and lesson. Second, provide intrinsically motivating techniques. When we say intrinsic motivation, it is an act of doing something without any apparent external rewards. We do it because it's fun and interesting, not because there is a pressure to do it, such as reward or deadline. An example of intrinsic motivation would be taking on more responsibility in school because you enjoy being challenged and feeling accomplished, rather than to get rewards. Hence, intrinsic motivation helps a student to see how the activity will benefit them.
So another principles of teaching speaking is to encourage the use of authentic language in meaningful context. It takes energy and creativity to devise authentic context and meaningful interaction. But with the help of a storehouse of teacher resource materials, it can be done. So it is important to make most of the classroom communication as authentic as possible in order to encourage students to view the target language as means of communicating. So authentic language can help learners to notice and analyze aspects of language usage which have gone unnoticed and untaught. It also provides them with the insights of the real language used in the real situation. In addition, language is acquired by communicating in meaningful ways using language in context.
Appropriate feedback and correction. It is important that you take advantage of the knowledge of English to inject the kinds of corrective feedback that are appropriate for that moment. For example, students are having oral activity and the students have difficulties in finding the appropriate words for their statement. And in that moment, you will interact and help that student to clearly express the idea. And also, always remind the class that don't tease the student who commits mistakes and being corrected because it is part of their learning.
Capitalize on the natural link between speaking and listening. Many interaction techniques that involve speaking will also, of course, include listening. Don't lose out on opportunities to integrate these two skills. As you are perhaps focusing on speaking goals, listening goal may naturally coincide. And the two skills can reinforce each other. Skills in producing language are often initiated through comprehension. A good typical classroom interaction is characterized by teacherization of language. We ask questions, give direction, and provide information, and students have been conditioned only to speak when spoken to. Your classroom can be one in which students become aware of and have a chance to practice such strategies. Asking for clarification, asking someone to repeat something, using fillers, using conversation maintenance cues, and getting someone's attention. The goal of teaching speaking is to encourage students to develop ability to communicate and interact with others, to develop fluency in expression, and to have bravery to share their ideas, feeling, and opinion to other people.
Give students opportunities to initiate oral communication. Part of oral communication competence is the ability to initiate conversation, to nominate topics, to ask questions, to control conversation, and to change the subject. It is important to give students opportunities to ask and initiate a conversation so that students have the chance to enhance their speaking in any situation. Encourage the development of speaking strategies, asking for clarification, asking someone to repeat something, using nonverbal expression, using conversation maintenance cues. It is important to encourage speaking strategies in teaching because appealing for assistance so that to get time to process or getting some attention, like for example, hey, say, so, or paraphrasing for the structure, one can produce a statement. Now let us proceed to the methods and techniques. First method is the conversation guided or conversation and interviews. It is important to have activities like interviews and conversations so that student will push their limits in speaking and interact with the other people outside or inside the classroom. Another method for teaching speaking is the information gap and jigsaw activities. These two activities in teaching methods simply because students can do the brainstorming and exchanging ideas, and they will enhance their communicative skills among their classmates.
Logic puzzles and debate. Critical thinking is an active mode of thinking. Instead of just receiving messages and accepting them as is, we consider what they are saying. We ask if messages are well supported. We determine if their logic is sound or slightly flawed. In other words, we act on the messages before we take action based on them. When we enact critical thinking on a message, we engage a variety of skills including listening, analysis, and evaluation. For example, the teacher can form groups of students and provide controversial topics. Each of the group is having a stand on the topic and will share it onto the class. This activity fosters the student critical thinking on a certain argument, and students learn how to justify and express their opinions in polite ways while disagreeing on the opposite side.
So, another method and techniques of teaching speaking is the picture-based activities and field trips. Another way to make use of pictures in speaking activity is to give students just one picture and having them describe what it is in the picture. For this activity, students can form groups and each group is given a different picture. Students discuss the pictures with their groups, then a spokesperson for each group describes the picture to the whole class. So this activity fosters the creativity and imagination of the learners as well as their public speaking skills.
We have another example, the physical action in speaking lesson. Specifically, the common example for this is the dialogue, wherein the dialogue pinpoints or underpin this activity help the student to reinforce their vocabulary by forcing the student to pick the correct item for the dialogue for their such physical action.
Extemporaneous speaking and small group discussion. This is a technique where students are encouraged to work on their own or collaborate with students with mixed abilities by organizing small group or whole class activity. Hence, a student's self-confidence can grow as a result of orally sharing thoughts and listening to others, as well as their communication and critical thinking skills, which are more important throughout life.
For the conclusion of this discussion, students actually have a strong desire to speak. They are reluctant to speak because they are afraid of making mistakes and failing to find suitable words to express themselves well. If the teach try to encourage them to speak using as many as ways possible and creating a good language speaking environment, student will speak actively, willingly, and naturally. Speaking as one of the four skills can be mastered only through practice. Practice makes perfect.